Good morning, good afternoon, everybody. Thanks so much for joining this the next episode of Q&A with Nick in the Learn with Nick episode. So stay tuned. We're gonna get started in about 10 minutes. If you have questions, feel free to start asking the questions in the comment section below. We already have quite a few questions from Learn with Nick subscribers, but also from social media. So just get started now if you want to ask your questions. But we'll get started in about 10 minutes. Good morning, good afternoon, everybody. Thanks so much for joining this episode, the live Q&A with myself. We're gonna be answering your questions today live in about 3 minutes, so stay tuned. And if you have questions, start asking in the comment section below. We already have quite a few, probably enough for the hour, but just in case, if you want your answers, get started now so we can try to squeeze you in. Stay tuned for another 3 minutes. Good morning, good afternoon. Thanks so much for joining this next session of live Q&A. Ask me anything with Learn with Nick. So this is going to be a great session. We have a lot of different questions on different topics, from culture to programming languages to documentation versus tangible outcomes. So this is going to be fun. If you have not yet subscribed to the show, make sure you do that at inthenicofTime.tv so you can get notifications about our next videos. Learn with Nick is here, so if you want to try it out, we have a 50% off for military, civilians, and veterans with a coupon code military, and then 20% off for the first 3,000 subscribers with Let's Beat China. You'll see the video we just released if you missed it. What is test-driven development, TDD? So check it out if you missed it. It's a great way for you to empower your development teams to think differently when it comes to testing and writing code. If you've not tried it, it's definitely a little bit different. I'm not a massive fan of it as a developer myself, but a lot of people love it and get great results with it. So definitely a good option for you to try out. If you have questions, again, make sure you ask into the comment section below. We have a lot of different platforms between Learn with Nick, between Twitter, LinkedIn, YouTube. So make sure you do ask the question in the comment section so they get pushed to our centralized Q&A session tool. So try to do that as soon as you can, because we already have quite a few questions from the public already, and the subscribers of Learn with Nick. If you missed it, we're going to be launching the Cloud Native Town metaverse in a couple of weeks. So this is going to be kind of a virtual universe with all the CNCF companies, all the Learn with Nick content, all the In the Nick of Time events, live events, a lot of guests, a lot of speakers. We're going to get a lot of communities there between cyber acquisition, contracting, zero trust, DevSecOps, and so on. So that's going to be great for people to come and share. And it's going to be live video chats and text chat as well. So it's going to be great. So if you want to check it out, if you want to be pushing content to that, if you have a company and you're pushing innovation that is related to DevSecOps, cyber, zero trust, and so on, we can put your videos there for free, no cost. If you want to help us, we are still looking for a couple of ambassadors to moderate and make sure people are behaving on the platform. So that's going to be fun. So yeah, it's going to be great. We're going to be launching in a couple of weeks. So don't hesitate to reach out to us if you have questions. Okay. Also, before we start the Q&A, we have a couple of ideas that came from the Twitter acquisition from Elon Musk, and if you want to help us, we're thinking, instead of creating a new company, we're thinking maybe it will be easier to buy a company. And so we're looking at IT related companies that are innovative and maybe struggling or not struggling, doesn't really matter. Maybe need a little push, maybe need a new leadership or not, doesn't matter. But if you know a pretty cool company, maybe a startup uh, already well established, looking at an acquisition between 100 mil to 500 million. So if you have any ideas, we got already probably 35 great options that were pushed to us on LinkedIn today. But obviously, sky is a limit. So let us know if you have some cool ideas. Could be, in cyber, could be in modeling and simulation, could be in space. As long as there's a software component, right? That's obviously our background, and we want to stick to that. So yeah, let us know if you have any cool ideas. Okay. Now we're gonna start taking some of the questions. So let's get started first with some of the Learn with Nick subscribers. Uh, let's look at some of the top questions. We try to rank it by demand. So the first question is about, actually, we have a great question on WASM. A lot of people ask us about WASM. And WASM is really a technology that's really growing rapidly. In fact, we're going to do a video on WASM in the next few weeks, and really you start seeing WASM adoption pretty much in every market. WASM really enables you to bring capabilities just in time, and not required to be compiled into your software. And so you can swap it, you can bring capabilities faster, but also there's a pretty big cyber benefit to it, and performances as well. So you've seen WASM show up in many capabilities. I know in the Istio universe, on the service mesh, for example, you're going to find WASM being used to bring a lot of additional capabilities to the mesh, in terms of maybe web application firewall or third-party integrations. So WASM is just a great ability for people to bring additional real-time capabilities to an existing product, for example. So um, it's um, it's pretty cool. So um, and yeah, LinkedIn is always struggling. So if people are struggling, and we actually have a lot of people on LinkedIn that keep going, coming and going. So if you want to go instead, and I see people on the chat talking about, I got a couple of private saying that LinkedIn is slow. So try out the YouTube live. Okay, I'm gonna put the link here to see the show on YouTube Live. So give it a shot. Usually YouTube is it's just better at handling streaming. Of course, you could also go to the Learn with Nick platform. I wonder actually how that's performing the streaming over there. So let us know if that's easier or not. But definitely YouTube works for sure. So we talk about WASM. So next question we had was about Rust, and so Rust, obviously programming language, really growing, including in embedded systems, and really kind of looking as the evolution of something like C, and really brings a ton of benefits. And I think, thinking about it here, I think it definitely deserves a dedicated video on kind of the pros and cons, but really it's more pros and cons, honestly. And performance is very good, security is very good, way less issues that you would see compared to C, for example. So really, Rust is really solving a lot of the issues we've been facing in cyber when it comes to mistakes being made by development teams. So yeah, definitely Rust is a great option, including for embedded systems. I know a lot of teams are moving to Rust in space and jets and planes and stuff like that. So that's pretty cool. Now we had a lot of questions also based on the little engagement or issue we had, I guess, yesterday with the DoD CIO, where the DoD CIO announced that they finally are about to release the Zero Trust strategy document. And I commented that, it took the DoD a year to write a strategy document that's probably obsolete by the time you're done writing it in such a fast-paced industry. um, but it took only 45 days for the Air Force and Space Force to put the Cloud Native Access Point in production, which is the largest implementation of Zero Trust in DoD. And yet, the department has refused to scale it and use it as the main solution for Zero Trust. Instead, awarding multi-millions of taxpayer money to Booz Allen, all to fail at delivering their MVP, and doubling down further by extending the 6 months MVP to another 18 months, and giving them more money after failing at delivering the capabilities. So obviously, people are not too happy when I comment, and I get it. I understand that people can be frustrated about people reacting on their work, or lack of results in this case. And people need to understand that when I started the DevSecOps initiative, one of the first piece of work we've done in parallel to, by the way, building the technical capability, was to release the DoD Enterprise DevSecOps reference design. So I'm certainly not saying that paper and strategy documents are useless, but what I am saying is, you can't just spend years writing strategy documents and not have tangible outcomes in parallel. And agility comes with learning, and you cannot actually iterate on those documents without building capabilities live in production, with end users giving you rapid feedback. When we deployed the CNAP, that was right at the beginning of COVID, and that saved us in the Air Force and Space Force to be able to deploy Mattermost to have an ability to communicate and chat between teams. And so, you definitely can see the impact of Zero Trust to enable teams to collaborate. And so Zero Trust, obviously, in the Cloud Native Access Point use case, enabled us to connect directly to the cloud without having to VPN to Nipper. And obviously the VPN could not take the load of that traffic. And so, as you can imagine, having the ability to deploy, Zero Trust in a matter of days saved us from not being able to do our work, and create this collaboration capabilities that really help the teams to succeed, and particularly in such a difficult time. We also had multiple options for multi-factor authentication, and many teams had no CAC reader at home, and so we had to find a way while they were waiting for the CAC readers to be able to connect, and we were able to do that, with multi-factor authentication on platform one single sign-on. All that was enabled and mitigated in terms of cyber risk by the cloud native access point. And so, what's frustrating is you have a great capabilities built initially in 45 days with a couple of $1 million, and now became kind of this big strong team that's able to deploy zero trust across all classification levels as needed. But yet, the department has refused to even look at it and use it, and instead they go back to the big primes to come back with a solution that's kind of this alleged silver bullet. What you would see though with a CNAP, and that's another video we've done on Learn with Nic, if you missed it, on acquisition. The big difference also of how we structure teams in CNAP is the fact that the government is the integrator, and we put multiple companies on contract, right, to really have the best talent and diversity of options and opinions. But the government is the integrator, and the government, gets to groom the backlog and prioritize the work and be more agile. And so that's been very successful, right, in having the ability to deploy capabilities that can move at a pace of relevance, and more importantly, avoid wasting taxpayer money with this big fat delivery of, um, often capabilities that don't meet the requirements of the warfighter. And so, for someone like duty CIO, to block me on LinkedIn because I told them that the whole truth, what I think is pretty fair to say. But more importantly, for him to reach out to people for the last 2 months, actually, not just yesterday, but for the last 2 months, reaching out to people to tell them, hey, if you like Nic's post, or if you engage, that doesn't look good for you, that doesn't look good for your company, you shouldn't do that. That's pretty scary, right? You're crossing the line of not only the First Amendment, but also government, pretty much blackmailing or threatening companies to lose their business if they follow someone or like what someone says on LinkedIn. So it's pretty scary. I'm debating on whether or not to engage with the Office of the Inspector General. I'll probably do that, but I've yet to see them do anything about anything, despite me reporting a couple of pretty big, significant incident that I witnessed personally too, in the job, and still in the building. And so, that's pretty scary. So people ask, a lot of people ask about, documentation, and I'm not saying you should not have documentation, right? It's perfectly fine to document things and write, some planning. The issue is that you see the department plan for years all to execute something that's now dated, and by the time it gets done, it's completely useless. And so, I think the key is to have this parallel exercise of documentation while deploying capabilities in production to get rapid feedback and learn and move fast and be efficient, right? If you start building things in a vacuum and you start documenting too much, that's a problem. More importantly, you look at the zero trust publication so far of the department, whether it's the initial DISA document or others, they all bloated. Effectively, what they're saying is, zero trust is all cyber, and that's just not true, right? Zero trust became this bloated thing. It started pretty well defined when Google and the software defined parameter community created zero trust back in the day. When I started at DHS and brought it to DHS, 7 years ago, that wasn't such a bloated term. And now, because companies are trying to pretend they're doing zero trust, everybody's kind of tweaking the definition, and it's becoming a buzzword of nonsense. And so it's concerning. And so, what I want to remind people is focusing on the key capabilities, right? Because if you keep making it so bloated that it's effectively as big as your cyber poster, then you're never going to achieve zero trust whatsoever, and it's kind of a pretty frustrating thing. And so there are key components of zero trust, right? So some people were asking what are the components. Well, of course, device enforcement and device identity and device, state is critical. Then you have the identity management piece, of course, strong identities for both people and systems. People often completely forget about systems and microservices, right? So that's a problem. And then we also have the data centricity piece where the labeling down to the cell level is so essential, right? So we made a video on data centricity. We made a video on zero trust. We also made a video on the cloud native access point. So we explained step by step how we architected it. And in fact, the main company we had used as a zero trust capability back then was AppGate. And several people reach out to me when we ask about what company we could buy, and AppGate was mentioned by several people. That's an interesting idea. I did not think about it before they did, but so overall, I think the key aspect of all this is to make sure that you're documenting enough so people have a good understanding of the vision and the backlog and kind of the total desired outcome to some degree, but you don't want to spend a year to write documentation that's going to be obsolete by the time you're done writing it. More importantly, what we see often is a strategy document that gets stale and stuck in time, and meanwhile you see no progress for the warfighter, and they're stuck in this pretty despicable state of lack of access to IT. Um, I was just talking to the defense DBB, whatever the board, Defense Business Board, or whatever the name is. They are working on a report. Great people, by the way, working on a report for DepSecDef on enterprise IT and what we should be fixing. The more you think about it, the more you realize that DISA is failing at doing their job, despite Joel Skinner, great guy, trying to fix it. You find the SES cult leadership, or at least alleged leadership, is trying to slow him down and really pretty much continue their traditional way of doing business, which is everything you can spell starting with disaster, whatever, disappointing. Um, they don't know how to run an enterprise. They're not business people. They are not entrepreneurs. They don't understand what it takes to run a successful company. They will never succeed on the commercial side, the real commercial side, not the DIB. And so, I think the key when you build an enterprise service in your company is to make sure you don't forget your end users or your customers, and they want to, they should be excited about the product you're building and the capabilities you're building. So keep that in mind when you build enterprise services, and you don't want to be too opinionated. You want to have flexibility options. Some things should be opinionated. We had a great discussion this week with Jay Bonchi, the Air Force and Space Force CTO, and he agrees with me that identity management, policy enforcement point, and many other things can be centralized as a single service. Um, emails, and so it's identities, right? So it's very important, right? And so people too often give too much flexibility by fear of making a stand and saying, hey, this is the way we're going to do it and get it done. Companies give flexibility to employees to a point, right? You don't see Amazon's giving complete freedom for everything on every aspect of the technical landscape when it comes to microservices and their teams. They still constraints to do business in the right way, right? You can just let everybody do whatever they want. More importantly, they avoid waste by preventing redundant work and siloed work, and that's what the department is really failing at. And everybody complains about lack of funding, but it's really more so waste of money more so than an issue with funding. A lot of people are getting frustrated, and the good ones are so upset that they end up leaving the work. So that's pretty disappointing to see so many people leaving. I heard again this week, both Philip Record, the Iron Bank product manager, and Cal Fox are leaving the department. Another two top talents leaving. So we need to do better. All right, let's look at other questions. So back to, there was one question again about documentation and stuff. People felt like that my post said, because I said, it's a strategy paperweight document. Well, many times the DoD publications are so bloated and heavy that no one wants to read it. And you can be concise and efficient. The DoD Enterprise DevSecOps reference design was pretty thorough, but yet it was pretty short and sweet and to the point. And I cut a lot of fat. When you let FFLDCs write a lot of stuff, they often tend, as good PhDs, to write a lot of different things, and that's okay. But you want to cut it, and you want to maybe have appendices and make it readable for people and keep people excited. And more importantly, you don't want it to get stale. So what I was doing with the reference design, we were updating it every 4 months. That's never been done in DoD before. Most publications are updated, not even a year, maybe 2-3 years. Most of the time, it takes a year to coordinate one release anyway. So that's important. And yeah, it's a big loss for Cal. Cal is great. He's going to start a great new job, but it is just a massive loss. And we had recommended Cal for the Air Force Chief Software Officer position, and he never heard back. And it's been a year since I left, and yet no one has been hired in the job. So that's pretty scary. And Sibida is asking a great question. And don't forget, if you want to ask questions, I have a bunch of questions from Learn with Nic and social media. But if you want to ask questions directly, you can do that here on the comment section. So Sibida was asking, in the spirit of my 1-year anniversary, if you had to do a retrospective of my year and resignation, what would my reflection be? It's interesting, right? Because I miss the building, I miss the Wolffighter, I miss the mission. When you're inside and you at least are trying to fix things and make it better, it's frustrating to not always be able to do what you do, but at least you can still make some difference. On the outside, I become kind of this person that keeps complaining and yelling and upsetting people, but no one else is willing to raise awareness, and the complacency is such in the building that people get away with murder pretty much. Literally the case in Afghanistan, for example. And yet, no one is held accountable. And so it's frustrating, to be on the outside. It's also helpful because I can raise awareness I could not have raised awareness about before. So it helped. It has helped, like I truly believe several things happened because of my being vocal on the outside, including the chief digital AI office, the merger of those Jake and DDS and all that into the office. I think a lot of these things were pushed by my being vocal about the IT debacle and the fact that China is taking over a lot of the critical next generation weapons. So several progress made in hypersonic and so on. Still pretty bad compared to the velocity of China, right? So I guess, there's many things I could have done much better. First, I never wanted Ray to be this kind of political / media worthy figure thing. I don't like it. Got a lot of death threats, pretty scary stuff. So I don't like it. I also don't like, any of this stuff. I'm an entrepreneur. I like to build stuff, and so it's been interesting because yes, I got to spend much more time with my kids and got my pilot license and stuff. So it's very exciting stuff. But at the same time, even when I help companies and I help people, I just feel like I'm not doing enough and I'm not making enough of a difference. And I'm letting my kids down by not being in the building and doing better and bringing more value to the warfighter and the taxpayer. And so it's just and the time goes by, and you see China not slowing down, and you see what's happening with TikTok and others. TikTok is another example of something I pushed before everybody else, and now you start seeing some momentum in banning TikTok. And I think people sometimes need the first voice to be someone like me to then build the momentum. And so I'm hopeful that I helped there quite a bit. But you never know. And honestly, that's why I'm kind of looking at maybe this acquisition of buying a company to go back to my managing and my building capabilities, because it's you know telling people how to do that is not really fun. When you're a doer, it's just easy to criticize. It's easy to tell people how to do things differently, but it's not very fun. So I've been helping quite a few nations, NATO partners as well. It's interesting how smaller nations that have less money end up being more frugal, and end up wasting less money, and being more efficient and caring more about outcomes. Although the bureaucracy is everywhere, so what you see in the U.S. is happening pretty much everywhere, to different level of complexity and nonsense. But so it's interesting. And I guess you were adding to your question there. Um, what I would want to improve is not to look like the guy that keeps you know yelling at people. Um, at the same time, no one is willing to do it, so it's easy for people to it's just easy. It's just funny how many people reach out to me in private saying, thank you, I can't comment on your post, or I can't like it, but I really appreciate what you're doing and I love it, but but I'm left with no choice but to be the bad guy all the time, and it's pretty exhausting, so but no one is willing to do it. I can't even think of a second person that's vocal on things like this. That's scary, right? We have quite a few people. Um, and you're saying, would I leave again or stay? I think I had no choice but to leave with this administration, right? Secretary Kendall is great, and I love the guy, but the rest of the appointees was not always, not all of them, but some of them are very incompetent, and that's just not when you spend 3 years getting good outcomes, and finally getting momentum and convincing people and getting there, and now you have to take a step back and start again from scratch with new people that are now saying the wrong things, and pushing China, and banning China, and just like making pretty big strategic mistakes, and asking very dumb questions, which tells you usually that you know they don't understand basics of life. I remember a very significant appointee asking me, if you have to pick, between the Jet C for the Jet C2 MVP, if you have to pick between cloud laptops and transport funding, which one will you pick to win against China? I'm like, this is not a picking game. You can't have a cloud without laptops to connect to it, and you can't have a cloud without transport to connect to it. So it's all or nothing. But you could tell, like, that person had no understanding of anything. So, and they usually get picked by checking boxes, right? Not competence boxes, personal boxes, and that's not good. So, you know, I don't think I could have stayed. I love to go back, uh, but it, to have to be in the right role and the right people and the right leadership, and so I don't think that's going to be until 2025. So I'm gonna have to be a little bit patient, I guess. Um, and yeah, I guess Andy is saying, he was also in the government. And it's all about the mission, right? It's and you're right, right? You can impact the mission from the outside, uh, but I think the kind of impact I'm trying to have really needs good players on the inside to make them happen. And so the issue I see is, when they refuse to engage and they refuse to partner, even at no cost, which is legal for me because I was a senior executive in the Pentagon, so I can actually work for free for 2 years, and they refuse that, right? And then at the same time, you have uh, John Sherman, the DoD CIO, complain that I complain all day and I don't do anything to fix it. And when I say, well, I can work for free, then they don't answer, right? Because that's not convenient, right? It's easy to say, oh, you're on the outside, you're complaining and you're not bringing any value. Well, okay, I'm gonna work for free, and now, well, that's not the answer I was hoping. So they're gonna stop talking now, right? It's just interesting, right? So, all right, let's move to another question. Let's see what I got. And again, if you have any questions, whether it's tech or culture or whatever, feel free to ask on the chat. I have to swap between different chats because we have a lot of them, so that's annoying. All right, so someone was asking, what are the 3 challenges of zero trust? That's a good question. I think the number one challenge is defining it, and people have it bloated, so I always go back to the basics. So the basic is really, it's software defined parameter, right? You want to be microsegmented, as granular as possible. You want to have strong identities for people and non-personal entity, and you want to have, device enforcement and data data centricity. And the data is the last piece. You don't really have to do that, So, um, so yeah, it's, you want to go back to the basics, and you really want to define what the MVP looks like. And anything that takes you more than 45 days to deploy an MVP, you're already doing it wrong. There's just it's glue code. It's putting things together. There's nothing custom. There's nothing new to create. It's already off the shelf. It's already ready to go. Right? Look at your requirements. For us in DoD, we wanted to be able to be air gapped, right? And so we had to be able to run on classified clouds. So the key was the control plane, of zero trust had to be hosted, right, on the government clouds. You don't want to trust a SaaS server. I would never ever, for any company whatsoever, trust a SaaS service for my zero trust control plane. So don't make that mistake. Don't do that. And someone was asking, what is an air gapped uh, what is an air gapped environment, and how do you really define it? It's tough, right? Because nothing is really air gapped, right? Things could be air gapped for a period of time. Often people mean it's not directly connected to internet, but really, I mean, the real air gapped environment is the only way to get in would be, in a secure building, or at least secure space, and not connected to anything. So nothing is really air gapped, because even if you start saying, well, we have a private network, well, now you have a bunch of devices connected, maybe throughout multiple cities or locations. So now you're gonna ride on top of some connectivity somewhere. So that's not really air gapped anymore, right? Real air gapped is, you know what we would do for nuclear systems, really, where there's really no connectivity whatsoever, right? And even that, how do you push up, right? So they are always cross domain solutions. So, real air gapped almost doesn't exist anymore, or very, very rarely, right? So the key, though, and air gapped is still thinking of the perimeter defense concept, right? So if you're moving to zero trust, you can potentially replace the air gap model by using data centricity and using, modern zero trust policy enforcement point. Some things are pretty scary to be connected, period, right? Because there's 0 days, there are different ways to get into systems. So I understand that some things would never be connected, but for most things, it's completely doable to have a zero trust model that does not really rely on the perimeter defense, right? So the top 3 things, zero trust, right, is go back to the basics, get a real MVP, stop being bloated, stop talking about it, just start doing more, right? I think the biggest issue is people are so stuck in terms of like fear of messing up. I think we created a culture of being afraid of failing, and that's why we've made this video: fail fast, learn fast, don't fail twice, for the same reason. um People are afraid of that, right? They claim, they often say, yeah, I'm fine failing. Well, you say that, but you're not, right? And most of us are not fine failing, right? I failed quite a few times, and it's good to fail. The key is to control the failure and not make it a a disaster, right? You want to fail small and learn fast, and don't make the same mistake, and grow from there. And but sometimes stuff happens, right? If you look at SpaceX, I think it's a good example, right? They always try to push the limits, and they expect failure sometimes, but then they also have zero issues, right? Knock on wood, but zero issues when it comes to transporting people and stuff like that, right? So you can take a different amount of risk in this use case, right? So um but yeah, so I think that answered that question. So a lot of people were asking about the recent breaches, right? You've seen GitHub repos being breached, right? Effectively, what you see is the DevSecOps stack are becoming your crown jewel, and hackers like Lapsus, right, are trying to get into your crown jewel instead of getting into your production environments, right? And so getting into your cron jewel now is different, and having your entire DevSecOps stack immutable in cattle, right? Killing it and going back to your immutable state is so essential. So I always tell people to really think about their maturity in embracing cattle versus pet, and and dismiss often and ignore the DevSecOps stack because they're thinking mostly production environment. But nowadays, your DevSecOps stack is probably even more important, and so you really want to embrace cattle, cattle, when it comes to your DevSecOps stack. So, you know, just food for thought when it comes to security, and some additional mitigation, right? That people are thinking is, when it comes to your software bill of material, now you can really have different checkpoints along your CI/CD pipeline to check integrity and provenance of the artifact, sign the different phases. So one thing we're trying to do at Platform One when I left, I told them, hey, each phase needs to be generating an artifact and sign it, and really prove integrity of that for your testing and scanning and all these phases, and then to release the final artifact, the container, as a final release, to have the key to sign it and approve it. You need to pass all those phases, artifacts, and those signatures are then used to do multi-party signing for the final artifact. So now you can release your container. Um, so yeah. Um, so Sibit had a good question here. A lot of people ask the same question, right? Build versus buy. There's different type of buy too, right? If of course, you could buy based on open source foundation, and then you can augment it and buy custom code to make it better. Um, you can buy off the shelf, right? And off the shelf have different abilities to be customized through APIs or different things. But often what you're going to find is the customizations are dependent and locked in with that product. So the more you're going to customize, the more you're locked in. And I've seen it, you know, in the Air Force, with billions of taxpayer money spent on things like databases with Oracle, for example, right? Where we customize it so much that it's a God's ugly baby, right? And so now you're kind of in a situation where if you had to swap, Oracle for something else, you have to rewrite all this logic, all this code, and it's just a massive lift. And so you effectively locked yourself to the cuts um, and now the company is probably going to be pretty happy about it. Um, so build is interesting because some people now say because of the velocity of DevSecOps, and if you have a very agile team, and if your scope is pretty different from the other shelf product, it's just easier to build from scratch, and that can be true. But particularly when you use a open source foundation, you can find a lot of the pieces, right, to put your capability together. So build on open source could be very good, right? Buying, when it comes to buying off the shelf, is obvious when it's really something that's turnkey and you're not gonna change it much. If you already know, I mean, if it's 5%, it's okay, right? But if you already know, and you already see it's not a fit, and it's gonna be a lot of customizations, despite the company trying to pretend it's okay and it's gonna be fine. You want to be careful there, and you probably want to think about building something. Um, it used to be a high bar to swap between buy to build, and the law was written in the fall, particularly to push government employees to buy versus build, which makes sense, right? Until really something happened in software where really DevSecOps and agile teams started to prove that in many use cases it's better to build, because you can use open source foundations and accelerate that build journey by 90%, and the customization is going to be much easier, and you're not locked to a company, right? So it's a case by case, and that's kind of the issue. That's why the biggest talent gap we have in the department is not getting a bunch of airman coders or developers or whatever. It's architects and people that understand the technology landscape and can make these kind of decisions, right? How to customize, how to build the strangler pattern, how to modernize, right? Just like architects and the modern uh, project managers that understand the tech, and we don't often have that, right? And that's a big problem. So great question there. Let's see what else I got. So someone was asking, why would I want to buy a company and spend 100 mil or 500 mil in an existing company, instead of you know just building a new company? Um, well, first, when I divested all my stuff after leaving to the government, that's pretty tough, because you divest a lot of great people I had for 10 plus years. So now you're starting back from scratch. It's a massive lift, and it's pretty painful to find good people. And starting from scratch is a massive lift, and it takes a lot of work. Um, and it's fun too, but it's also, there are pieces of it like marketing and all the basics of, like, legal and getting the proof of concept done and stuff, that is pretty painful. But also, the attracting the talent and building the team, it's a pretty big lift. So it's just often now, I guess, easier to just go and buy a company that has good people and good market and good traction. Maybe some gaps, right, that you can come and fix, and bring some strategic leadership to it to streamline the process. So that's why we're thinking about buying versus creating a new company. But you know if you have any any company that's kind of a IT cool capability product, 100 to 500 mil valuation, let us know. We're very interested to talk to those guys. Doesn't have to be a hostile takeover, by the way. We're just saying, hey, maybe it's a good fit. Doesn't have to be toxic, right? And maybe even better if it's outside of the DoD, so I can maybe stop being seen as this kind of toxic figure of criticizing the department all the time. But I don't know who else is going to do it. I think people all realize that we've been effectively failing at doing our job in the department for so long that and the complacency is such that there is no competition. You don't really see it on a day-to-day basis, right? So unlike a company that will go out of business in a couple of years, the department can keep going for 20 years until there is a big military event. But China is smart enough to do it behind the scene and underground, and not in a over way, and so you don't end up in those situations, right? And we'll see it pretty soon. I'm afraid, with Taiwan, right? So it's just, I'm just worried that if no one is holding people accountable, and God knows that Congress is not doing their job. The meetings with the staffers and the Hask and Sack, it's just useless, right? It's they're getting briefed at all, just the same brief, by the way, that by the time they get from the 0304 guy that's doing the work with the enlisted, to the generals, to the SECAF, is a complete different picture compared to the real universe of what's happening in that team. It's just, I've been shocked to see how biased and wrong the reports going to the leadership were compared to what I would see in real life. But that's because the leadership doesn't have the time and also the technical expertise to go into the meetings and take a look at the real stuff, right, and really see what's going on. And so you know it's something we must have, with the loss of Jason Weiss, the loss of Weston Dunlap, Cal Fox, myself, um, Michael Brown. There's not a lot of technical talent left in the department as senior leader. It's often governance or managers, and not so much technical people. So that's pretty concerning in a world that will depend on technology to succeed. So something to think about, right? Um, Again, if you have questions, we can probably take a couple more on the chat. I do have a couple here. Let's see. What did I miss? This one we answered. Um, so, um, so we're gonna do a video on WASM. A lot of people ask follow-up questions on WASM, so I'm gonna do a dedicated video on WASM, so you get that. I think it's a great topic. We're planning quite a few videos coming up. The next one will be on RegOps. RegOps is kind of this new concept tied back to the continuous ATO, right? It's how to automate all the regulation stuff, the compliance stuff, right? So that's gonna be fun. There's a couple of products out there that are doing a very good job at automating the durations of artifacts and ATO documentation and stuff like that. So we're gonna do a video on that next week. We have a video on what all CLDs in Kubernetes, what is feature selection and hyperparameter tuning in AI, how to do air gap CI/CD, so how to push from low to high, how to push into an air gapped environment. We're gonna have a full course coming up on Istio and Service Mesh with about 20 plus videos. We have a video on tracing, incident management, actionable alerting. So how to run a multi-tenant DevSecOps platform and fund it. That's pretty cool. TDD versus BDD. Domain-driven design. Very important for the Strangler pattern implementation, right? So we have a Strangler pattern video already, but we're gonna do a deeper dive on DDD. Okay. So what am I missing? Do you guys have any content, any topic that you find yourself struggling with, and you like to get a quick 5-10 minute video to cover. I know that we have about 50 plus, right? And keep in mind we are gonna have the metaverse coming out, and you're gonna be able to walk in. And the beauty there is we're gonna have rooms, right? So you can go into the cyber room, you can go into the zero trust room, you can go into the DevSecOps Kubernetes room, whatever, and you can interact with people that have the same questions, challenges, lessons learned. You can share, you can engage, video chat, meetings, whatever. It's gonna be a lot of fun, I think. So I'm gonna be on there too, of course. So um, what else are we missing? So people were asking, about culture. So they were asking what content do you have when it comes to culture? I'm gonna put the link, I guess, because we did quite a few. I think we could do more. And you can tell me what we're missing, but we have a lot. Here, if you look at this link here, okay, um, let's see if I can. Uh, Here, I put the link to this culture category of videos we got into Learn with Nick. We have like how to prevent change management from becoming your biggest bottleneck. So how to do multiple eyes on code and changes for everything as code, GitOps, right? How to make sure you're not building software in a vacuum, fail fast, learn fast, don't fail twice for the same reason. How to enable teams to focus on their mission software. How to properly measure DevSecOps maturity with the DORA metrics. Shift left, security testing, compliance, and your other bottlenecks. Executive sponsorship, how to educate leadership on the importance of DevSecOps and build momentum. How to balance cybersecurity and innovation. So the education on leadership is pretty good because that's how I explained how I took the time to convince the leadership 3 years ago to do DevSecOps and kind of the different tricks and tools you can use to do that, right? Um, um, yeah, I guess we could do how not to panic after reporting cyber incidents. People are always worried about the blameless postmortem. In fact, I'm not wrong. I think I have a video on blameless postmortem, right? So I think I did that. Let's see, blameless. Let's see if I have it. It's on postmortem. Um, if I can find it here, but I know we have one. Uh, yes, blameless postmortem. Here we go. So check out this video because it's kind of the same principle, right? You need to have the culture to enable people to report issues and really not be worried about consequences, right? Of course, people start assuming that blameless means everybody can get away with murder. There's limits, right? Back to the fail fast and don't fail twice for the same reason. If people keep making the same mistakes and they're not learning, then you probably want to make a change um, and hold people accountable. And there are things in life where if you mess up, it's pretty bad. Look at the Afghanistan debacle, right? So um, you don't want to fail twice on that one. That's pretty bad with the first one already. So I hope we're learning, right? But I don't think we are, by the way. But so check out this video on how to build a culture of blameless postmortems and kind of the tools you can have. But people often forget that this stuff happens 15 million times a day, and so many companies are impacted. You're not the only one, right? So you know, don't be afraid of that, right? All right, let's see. So wanted to remind people also that next Tuesday, right, we're gonna have a great guest. We're gonna have Dan next week. Dan is the co-founder of Control Plane, and is gonna talk with us about. And I think it's a great topic because I had a lot of fights with the army specifically on Kubernetes because they were completely brainwashed by VMware and they're getting vendor locked in, and I always felt for the department to be agnostic and have diversity of options was so important. And so Control Plane and Dan, the co-founder of the company, they're going to come to talk to us about how to be cloud agnostic and what they built as an abstraction layer of that control plane to be able to do that at scale and be efficient there. And so that's pretty exciting. It's just great stuff. And the way they've done it is just well done. And we're going to look at the pros and cons, right? How do you then use um, cloud capability that don't exist, you know, in the abstraction layer because it's not common or it's unique to one cloud provider? What are the pros and cons? How do you manage identities? How do you build a cyber stack? Is it a cloud agnostic cyber stack? Are you using cloud native cyber capabilities? But then how do you get cohesive visibility on your clouds if you're multi-cloud, which is exactly how the DoD is not doing a good job with their defensive cyber operation team. It's a disgrace, right? I mean, it's so bad I can't even tell you about it. That would probably be classified. So it's just it's just bad. Um, and so I think there's a lot of lessons learned with how that's been implemented. And Cloud One has tried to do something like this, but they've not done enough of a good job at abstracting the cloud providers when it comes to bringing enterprise services that are agnostic to the CSP. So I think it's going to be a great episode. So it's going to be next Tuesday at 1 p.m. Eastern. So looking forward to seeing you there. Meanwhile, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out on LinkedIn. If you know companies, right, that all could be a good purchase, acquisition, M&A, 100 mil to 500 mil, 500 is probably the max. I mean, we could probably go a little bit higher, but, something around 500 mil, not too big, not too small, right? No crazy variation, please. I've seen craziness and people are saying to wake up now with the recession, right? So hopefully that was helpful. If you have questions, reach out to us on LinkedIn. Meantime, if you want to subscribe and you have not subscribed yet to the show, make sure you go at the in the nick of time.tv to register. If you want to give a try to learn with Nick and all these videos we talk about today and all this content, there's a free trial for you to play with stuff. So go try it out. If you have feedback about learning with Nick and how to improve it, and you want to play with us with this metaverse coming, please do that. I love to get your feedback as well. In the meantime, you stay safe, and thanks for helping us making sure that our kids have a fighting chance against China 20 years from now. Stay safe, everybody. We'll see you soon next Tuesday, 1 p.m. Bye bye.